Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
The government has financially penalized people with disabilities for putting their health on the line to help keep us fed.
How advocates say the pandemic has exposed a flaw in BC's income assistance program. Also,
unless people come out, then restaurants won't exist.
Restaurants scramble to adapt a long-term pandemic model they hope will keep business afloat for months to come. And
having an advanced screen for COVID, even with a vaccine, is going to be important.
Desperate to take off.
Yeah, fantastic.
Canada's airline industry adapting to make sure people feel COVID safe when they fly.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
good evening. Imagine being asked to work longer hours but not getting paid for it. That's what's happening right now for many people in BC with disabilities.
They have jobs deemed essential and during the pandemic have been asked to pick up full-time hours. It has put them at risk of losing their income assistance. And as Joel Ballard with CBC Vancouver's Impact Team reports now, advocacy groups say the pandemic has exposed the inadequacy of BC's income assistance program.
Corey Duhame has worked at Save On Foods for the past decade.
I collect the buggies, the baskets. Well, I would normally empty the bottles, but with COVID, I ain't taking the chance.
Duhame has autism. Before the pandemic, he was working 3 shifts a week, but that changed.
They were asked to work full-time because the stores really needed them.
Many people with disabilities were all of a sudden working up to 40 hours a week. But as the pandemic proceeded and the demand for full-time work continued, people found they were at risk of losing their income assistance.
A single person on disability assistance receives just under $1,200 a month, and they can supplement that income with work. But if they earn more than $12,000 a year, that income assistance is then clawed back dollar for dollar.
The government has financially penalized people with disabilities for putting their health on the line to help keep us fed.
Corey cut back on his hours, but that's not the case for all people with disabilities working essential retail jobs, like Ashley Addy, who also has autism and works at Thrifty Foods.
I love the sense of purpose it's given me and all the people I've met, and I never saw myself working in retail before, but I love it.
She hit her yearly earnings limit in October. Since then, she's continued to work, essentially for free.
If PWDers wish to work to whatever capacity that they're able to work, then they should be allowed to without that fear.
When the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit was announced, the federal government set a benchmark of $2,000, a monthly number deemed essential for a person to survive. Advocates say it was a slap in the face to the disability community, who earn around $800 less.
It really demonstrated something that we inherently know, that disabled lives are valued less in our society.
Now, many are calling for an overhaul of the assistance program. For its part, the province announced in its 2020 budget an expansion to the work exemption from $12,000 a year to $15,000, an amount the Duhames say is still too low.
We're keeping people in poverty, and we're not empowering, we're not giving them the tools to get ahead.
The BC Liberal social development critic says it's something he'll push government to look at. When asked by CBC News, the province said it intends to introduce historic disability legislation in the spring, a season that's still far away for those who need help now. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Delta.
As of today, you can apply for the $1,000 recovery benefit. That is, if you're able to access the website without it crashing. People have been struggling all day as the site itself struggles to cope with high demand. The portal for the application went live at 8:30 this morning, but within 1 minute, it would not load for many, many users. Now, by mid-afternoon, BC's Ministry of Finance said 50,000 British Columbians had successfully submitted an application. Still, there's been a lot of criticism about the criteria. It's based on 2019 tax returns, meaning someone who's only recently lost a job due to the pandemic may not qualify. Premier John Horgan tells CBC News his government is leaving the door open for broadening the parameters.
Certainly, government stands ready to provide programs and services to them, including the COVID benefit. But we had to have a starting point. For those that do fall between the cracks, government is ready and able. We have 87 members of the legislature across British Columbia that can hear from those citizens, bring those ideas to government, and will act upon them.
If you haven't managed to apply for the benefit just yet, June 30th of next year is the final deadline.
The pandemic has left many BC restaurants reeling. For some, keeping the business afloat has meant sacrifices, and for others, it's meant adapting. Our Zara Premji is finding out how a sector on the brink is striving to survive.
At the height of the holiday season, Shumbar would normally be buzzing, but this year it's quiet.
It's pretty devastating.
Like many other restaurants in BC, staff here used to see lineups, wait lists, and a full house. But now a pandemic-struck ghost of its former self.
It's pretty strange to come into a restaurant that has been so bustling with energy and people, and for that not to be there.
With the evolving restrictions and orders, it's not just restaurants here. Owners around the world are grappling with the same question: how to stay open if customers aren't coming.
We recently closed from Monday through Wednesday just because there wasn't enough people coming out.
And she worries they won't make it much longer.
Unless people can come out, I mean, restaurants are like democracy. They require participation. So unless people come out, then restaurants won't exist.
But on the other end of the spectrum, while many contemplate closures, one restaurant decided to do the opposite. Opening a brand new location just last month during the peak of the pandemic's second wave.
As much as they thought we might be nuts to get going and get started, we really believed in it.
Catering to a more pandemic-friendly approach for business.
It worked out that takeout was what we were focusing on anyway.
Optimistic, but the fear of possible closure remained in the back of her mind too.
Oh my God, is that going to happen to us? And are we going to face this problem? And if we do, then how are we going to handle that challenge?
And both say two things are needed to keep the lights on in restaurants. British Columbians supporting local.
We depend on the community. We can't survive without them.
And government delivering clearer guidelines so people know in certain circumstances, like dining with their own household, they are allowed to eat out.
People are confused and assuming they can't come out at all.
And that hesitancy, they say, could lead to the shuttering of many restaurants before we even reach the light at the end of the pandemic tunnel. Zara Premji, CBC News, Vancouver.
To today's COVID-19 numbers now from Dr. Bonnie Henry. And sadly, they include another 11 deaths in our province. BC's death toll now sits at 724. 624 more cases of the virus have been confirmed. That brings BC's total to more than 45,000. 356 people are currently hospitalized with COVID-19. 92 of them are in critical care. Active cases are just under 10,000. And just over 10,211 people are under active public health monitoring. Roughly 1,400 doses of the Pfizer vaccine were given out yesterday. Nearly 2,600 people have been vaccinated in BC so far.
The situation at Big White Ski Resort is worsening tonight. At least 76 cases are now linked to a community cluster there. Yesterday, all upcoming reservations for people outside the resort area were canceled. The day before, a number of employees were fired for breaking a social responsibility contract. The rapid spread of the virus is being linked back to social gatherings and overcrowded group housing.
There is testing on site at the mountain yesterday and today, so we can anticipate that we can find more cases that may need to be isolated in a different location.
The health authority is working with employers and landlords to address overcrowding in staff housing. 19 people from there have recovered so far, and no one linked to this cluster has been hospitalized.
And health authorities are also confirming a worsening situation in northern BC's Nechako region. There are now 108 active COVID-19 cases in the region, covering Fraser Lake, Vanderhoof, and Fort St. James. Health officials and First Nations leaders there are urging people to stay vigilant over the holidays in one of the province's hardest hit regions. First Nations Health Authority has taken over an area hotel where people can self-isolate. And coming up in about 20 minutes, we're going to be speaking with Dr. Shannon McDonald. She is the Chief Medical Officer with the First Nations Health Authority, and she's going to tell us why infections in remote Indigenous communities are soaring and what can be done about it.
3 churches in the Fraser Valley have now been fined more than $18,000 in total for ignoring COVID-19 restrictions. The 3 congregations have been charged with 8 counts of failing to comply with public health orders. In-person religious services were banned in November as part of the latest measures to curb the spread of COVID-19. The RCMP announced the fines today after witnessing in-person gatherings the last 2 Sundays. Police have not identified the specific churches that have now been fined.
RCMP's Serious Crimes Unit is investigating a curious act of vandalism at Burnaby Hospital. Somebody slashed the tires of 4 cars on the evening of November 7th. Police are trying to establish whether this targeted crime is linked to the arson, which led to an evacuation of the ER 1 week later. RCMP tell us the Serious Crimes Unit wouldn't usually investigate, but they are taking on the file because of the severity of the arson investigation. The evacuation contributed to the spread of COVID-19 at the hospital.
Well, to Victoria now, and criminal charges have been laid more than 2 years after an investigation was launched into the BC Legislature spending scandal. Former clerk Craig James now faces 4 counts of breach of trust and 2 counts of fraud in excess of $5,000. It's the latest development in one of BC's most bizarre parliamentary controversies. James was one of 2 senior officials accused of misspending taxpayer dollars and outrageous personal expenses.
There have been some significant changes in relation to the clerk's office and the speaker's office in terms of transparency. So there is now a disclosure of expenses.
James made his first court appearance in Victoria today and was released on bail.
The husband of a mother struck and killed by a runaway delivery van in Surrey this week is now asking for your help. He's calling his wife heroic for rescuing her daughter's lives before she died.
Our Dan Burra joins us live now with the latest on this. So Dan, first, tell us about this mom.
Her family says her daughters, as Mike said, are alive because she saved them. On an online fundraising page, Daljit Masada says his wife, Paramjeet, was the most beautiful, dedicated mother to twin girls and a loving wife for 26 years. The family had just moved into the neighborhood in Surrey and were enjoying a wholesome life, he says, before this tragedy suddenly took the road from under them all. He's now allowed to raise his daughters as the sole breadwinner with little family here in Canada. As we told you earlier this week, Mounties say a van with no driver inside somehow went up on a sidewalk near 144th Street and 61A Avenue on Tuesday. It hit Paramjeet as she walked with her twin 8-year-old daughters. Her husband says she pushed them out of the way right before she was hit. While paramedics and firefighters could not save her, she did not die alone. Jerry Barr was driving his son home from high school when he saw the van heading toward Paramjeet and her daughters. He raced to help.
I said, "You got to wake up for me." Her eyes were fluttering a bit, and I said, "Just so you know, the children are fine. Just so you know." And I didn't at that time. I didn't even know the relation to her, to the children. And it's even more devastating that, it's her children that were right there. And it's losing a little bit of sleep over it. I just hope, she heard me and understood.
Mounties say it's not yet clear how or why the driverless van hit Paramjeet. They say a driver linked to the vehicle is cooperating with them. Meanwhile, nearby Goldstone Park Elementary School says its Parent Advisory Council is now helping organize monetary donations after a parent at its school was the victim of a tragic accident. It's also offering support for students. Tanya, Mike.
All right, Dan, thanks very much. And 2 people are in hospital with serious injuries after being hit by a car involved in another crash. This was the scene over the noon hour today near Cambie and West Broadway in Vancouver. Police say 2 cars collided, pushing the one vehicle onto the sidewalk in front of the No Frills grocery store. PPD officers did block off the area while investigating the crash. They say both drivers are cooperating with police.
There is no simple solution to BC's skyrocketing condo insurance costs. That's a headline out of a final report by the Crown Corporation that regulates the industry. Risks related to catastrophic events have been impacting premiums and deductibles. Those risks impacting insurance companies' bottom line. The difficult outcome for condo and strata owners, however, is an average 40% increase in their premiums. BC's Financial Services Authority is warning owners to buckle up because no short-term or even long-term relief from further increases is expected.
Vancouver Police have released the final results of their neighborhood response team. The team was created to deal with growing complaints from the Granville Strip, Strathcona, Chinatown, and Yaletown areas. The team was deployed for 42 days in response to concerns from some residents in those areas. During that time, officers responded to 1,400 calls. The team was tasked with focusing on low-priority calls that would normally have taken hours or days to respond to.
Responded to more than 1,400 calls for service. Throughout these interactions, 210 weapons were taken off the streets. And as you can see in front of me, it's just a sample of some of the weapons that have been seized. There is no doubt that these weapons would have been used in the commission of serious, if not deadly, offenses.
The neighborhood response team is now being disbanded. Vancouver Police say without a budget increase, it can't afford to assign officers to it.
The HMCS Winnipeg made its way back to Canadian shores today, and its crew was greeted by many friends and family.
My boys are very excited. They made some signs this weekend, and so yeah, we're just really excited.
The frigate entered the Esquimalt Harbor after 4.5 months away on a deployment. The crew left in September for the Asia-Pacific region to take part in several operations which were aimed at strengthening ties with foreign navies. The ship, though, is coming home one person short after Master Sailor Dwayne Earl from Winnipeg went missing on Monday. Earl is believed to have accidentally fallen overboard. A search took place but was finished 30 hours after it began. A ceremony was held to honor the memory of Earl.
Johanna Wagstaffe now with the first look at the forecast. I read your synopsis early this morning, and you used the word gross to describe today, which seems appropriate.
Yes, I think I nailed the forecast. This is level 5 grossness, I would say, on this gorgeous evening out here. The front is literally crossing Metro Vancouver as we speak. So after what was a very soggy day, it is just ramping up now as far as the front. We're getting some gusts now coming in from the southeast. Any moment now, we'll see those winds shift around to the northwest. Always an exciting moment for a meteorologist when the front passes and we see those winds shift. Take a look at the radar right now. I've left the temperatures on there, but winds are the other side of the story. Still looking at another hour or two of the heavy rain and the strong winds. Wind warning still in place for Metro Vancouver. In fact, for most of the south coast, we've already seen gusts at YVR up to 60 kilometers per hour over the last few hours. We could see those top out at 70k for that cold front as it slides through. Probably by the last time we talk, we'll be looking at those northwesterly winds. So I'll keep you posted, and I'll get into where it's dry.
I'd like to say we're looking forward to it, but maybe we'll have to couch that one. Thanks so much, Johanna. Talk to you soon. Well, the airline industry has been among the hardest hit by the pandemic. Even during this holiday season, travel has tanked.
But as Briar Stewart explains, there are several efforts underway to help Canadians feel more comfortable about taking off.
I'm going to ask you to pull down your mask for me, please.
It's another step at check-in, but completely voluntary.
How was it?
Yeah, that's not fun.
In Vancouver, passengers flying on WestJet can take a COVID test, both a swab and a spit version. It's part of a UBC study to check their accuracy.
Yeah, it's great because I'm going to see my parents and they're older, but this is just kind of like next level peace of mind.
While Ali Martinez feels safe flying to Winnipeg, many usual travelers are staying home.
During the holidays, Vancouver Airport would typically get 100,000 passengers a day, but this year they're expecting 10 to 15% of that. With the vaccine still several months away for most Canadians, the aviation industry is looking at ways to help make people feel safe about flying again.
The pilot project is one of a handful taking place across the country. In Calgary, nearly 15,000 travelers from abroad have taken part in a program which allows them to have a shorter quarantine period if they test negative. In Montreal, the airport launched on-site rapid testing for those traveling to France.
They need to have the negative results, so for them to be able to do it in kind of a one-stop shop at the airport is very convenient.
This week, WestJet and Air Canada resume flights to Hawaii because Canadians can skip the quarantine there if they pay a private lab like this one to take a test ahead of time.
The demand has continually grown, and when we sort of ramp forward, we think we're going to be able to probably be doing about 200 a day.
All of the testing is part of an attempt to figure out air travel in a COVID world.
Having an advanced screen for COVID, even with a vaccine, is going to be important.
I'm free. Because if airports find tests that are reliable, it could go a long way in convincing people to start traveling again.
Have a good flight.
Thank you. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
And a reminder, you can also watch our newscasts live on the free CBC Gem app.
And CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
They've been told to pay back money they got as part of the Federal Emergency Response Benefit Program. Coming up, why despite reassurances from the Prime Minister, many remain concerned about having to cough up the cash.
And thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. When the pandemic canceled the annual Christmas recital at the Kinsman Lodge Care Home in Surrey, the elders there decided to produce a CD called Pandemic Party.
Yeah, it includes some Christmas-themed and regular songs as well as poems. Here's a clip of one of the elders singing Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, this dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, I also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Like karaoke at the Kinsman Lodge? Nice.
You know, there's such barriers with people not being able to see loved ones inside long-term care homes. It's nice that they can kind of cheer each other up inside. So good on them. We'll be back in just a few moments. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Ottawa tonight, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is trying to reassure Canadians who received CERB payments in the spring and have recently been asked to pay back thousands of dollars. But as Hannah Thibodeau reports, there was still a lot of concern among those people.
It's been a difficult year. There's no other way to put it.
That could be an understatement by the Prime Minister, as thousands of Canadians received a letter from the Canadian Revenue Agency saying they may have to pay back emergency COVID-19 relief benefits before the end of the year. The PM tried to reassure them.
We didn't deliver support to millions of Canadians who needed it just to claw it back at Christmas.
But he wasn't so clear about what happens after Christmas for people like PEI cake maker Christine McDonald.
They are now expecting me to pay back $18,500.
The issue for McDonald and others is how they calculated their income when they applied for the benefit, using their gross total. The CRA says qualification is based on net, but many Canadians say that stipulation was nowhere to be found when applications were accepted back in March.
I faithfully did everything that I was supposed to do under the emergency situation. And, you know, I did nothing wrong.
We're already broke.
This BC musician had all of his concerts canceled, had no income coming in, but he also got a letter because in his application, he didn't include rental income he receives. And he says he didn't know he had to.
The province has just asked us to buckle down again and stay home. We've missed the whole holiday season. As musicians, this was another of our busy times. And my son came down from upstairs and offered to sell toys to help. Like, you shouldn't have to do that.
The PM says good faith mistakes won't be punished or pursued. However, when he was asked if the government would waive repayments altogether for those who made honest mistakes, he would only say that they'll work with individuals on a case-by-case basis. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now, many people filled out their CERB applications based on information provided by Revenue Canada call center agents, and that information may have been wrong. Late today, the head of the union representing those agents said they were given incorrect information about eligibility requirements.
From the start, it was clear that it should have been the net income that was to be used to check the eligibility of taxpayers for the program. But it seems that at the beginning, the instructions given to the agents on the line answering calls from Canadians was mentioning that was the gross income. And then a few weeks later, I think somebody realized there was a discrepancy and the question was raised and then a change was made. And then the instructions to the agents answering the calls were fixed to say that it should be the net income.
Well, a different federal program has helped subsidize the paychecks of almost 4 million Canadians. The Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program is designed to help businesses weather the pandemic by supporting their payroll. But a private Ottawa golf club is now sitting on a $1 million surplus, mostly thanks to those federal subsidies. Jonathan Gatehouse has that story.
I welcome you to join the club.
The Royal Ottawa Golf Club promotes itself as one of the oldest, most prestigious clubs in Canada, a playground for Ottawa's elite. When the pandemic hit, the club did what more than 350,000 other employers did. It applied for the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy to help cover the payroll, fearing COVID restrictions would make it hard to pay staff.
Welcome to our 120th AGM.
CBC News has obtained the club's audited financial statements and a recording of its recent annual general meeting. The club treasurer telling members they're closing out the year with a big surplus, thanks in large part to the federal wage support.
It was over $1 million, and that ended up on the bottom line. We didn't know what the next year was going to bring to us, And so we decided just to park it in the surplus.
Turns out even with the clubhouse closed, the course was full all summer with socially distanced golfers, and the club did far better than it expected.
The spirit of CEWS is compensatory. It's to keep you whole under pandemic conditions. It's not intended to be a windfall.
Club representatives declined our request for an interview, but emailed that the CEWS wage subsidy has given us the flexibility to survive this extremely challenging time. They pointed to a canceled Thanksgiving dinner as a substantial food loss that was absorbed by drawing down on our surplus. The notion that companies who got the subsidy might end up with a surplus may not be something Ottawa fully considered, though Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland insisted recently the intention of the money was always clear.
The wage subsidy can, by very clear and specific design, only be used to pay employees. That money cannot be used for any other purpose.
A spokesperson for Freeland said that any employers who misuse the subsidy will have to pay it back, along with a 25% penalty on the amount claimed. As for Royal Ottawa, the club maintains it did initially need the money for payroll, and now is under no obligation to pay it back. Jonathan Gatehouse, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario is extending lockdowns in 2 of its major regions and is introducing another. Hamilton will go into lockdown on Monday. As Lorenda Redekop explains, it's the same day tougher measures could be on the way because of surging COVID-19 numbers.
In the areas that are locked down right now that are expiring on Monday, I can tell you they won't be expiring.
Premier Doug Ford confirmed that lockdowns for Peel and Toronto, where cases continue to rise, will remain in place. He spoke briefly before an emergency teleconference with hospital CEOs.
I want to listen to what's happening on the ground, within the hospitals, within ICU units. We're going to have an emergency meeting over the weekend, and we'll make a decision on Monday.
The weekend meeting will be between government officials. Sources tell CBC the government is considering a more restrictive lockdown that would take effect on Boxing Day until January 11th. The sources couldn't say exactly which regions would be included, but say Northern Ontario would not be. Sources compared the possible measures to what Quebec is doing, closing all non-essential businesses, issuing a mandatory work-from-home order for most office employees, and moving schools online until January 11th. One source called the possible restrictions a modified stage 1, similar to the first wave.
Might be a bit late because right now, we have to discourage people from having large gatherings for Christmas. So I think delaying sends the wrong message.
Hospitalizations from COVID have been rising. This emergency room doctor says the overall numbers don't tell the full story.
When I do a shift right now, it's very quiet. There's maybe half the usual patients, but the ones that we're getting are really sick. Like, we have to put them on a ventilator, we have to put them on oxygen, so they're not messing around. And the people with sprains and cuts up to heart attacks are staying at home because they're afraid to come in.
The opposition is also calling for a response now.
They foot drag, they delay decisions, they dither, and in the meantime, people get sick and people lose their lives, and families, get torn apart.
Following today's meeting, the Ontario Hospital Association said in a statement it hopes the government heeds its advice, saying should stricter measures not be put in place and should the public ignore public health advice and choose to gather over the holiday season, the consequences risk overwhelming Ontario's hospitals. The Premier says he'll announce any possible new restrictions Monday at 1 p.m. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Thank you.
Indigenous communities in the north of BC are being infected with COVID-19 at twice the rate of the rest of the population. We speak with Shannon McDonald, Chief Medical Officer of the First Nations Health Authority, on why that is. It's coming up next.
To be young, gifted, and soon to be rich. That is the happy fate of 2 teenagers who don't waste their time and money playing video games. They're far too busy inventing them.
They don't look like millionaires, not even potential millionaires. What they look like is pretty much what they are, a couple of very bright suburban teenagers. Jeff Sember is 16 and in grade 12 at North Burnaby High School. Don Matrick is 18, a first-year student at Simon Fraser. The game they invented is called Evolution.
So what we have here is the 6 different creatures in evolution running onto the screen, starting with an amoeba, a frog, a rodent, a beaver, a gorilla, and a human. And these are the 6 different characters in evolution. And what you're trying to do in the game is start out as an amoeba and evolve onwards up to a human. And you get 5 lives to start with, and you go as far as you can on those 5 lives.
It took Don and Jeff just 3 weeks last summer to come up with the game. A Vancouver company, City Developments, liked it and decided to market it. Since then, they've flown to New York, zipped around in limousines, been interviewed by all sorts of people, and to date, made about $50,000. But that's only the beginning. Within the next few months, they expect to become millionaires.
It's kind of interesting. I mean, you think about things like I always wanted to get a Ferrari or something, and now I think, gee, I might be able to go out and buy one. Your dreams come a little bit closer. It's hard to believe sometimes. You wonder if it's really happening to yourself or if it's not, but it's neat overall. It's kind of interesting.
What changes has it made to your life? What happens when you go to school now?
I don't think anything's really changed. I mean, I get ribbed a lot, and, you know.
How?
Well, kidnapping threats.
I'm not going to pay. That's okay.
I gotta ask you, what about girls? Has this had any effect with girls?
No. You're asking the wrong person.
Go on.
Well, now you found my true talents. No, the girls, basically, some girls come up to you and notice you that didn't notice you before. But your friends, your true friends are always the ones you had before, I think, and it's pretty well stayed the same.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It really demonstrated something that we inherently know, that disabled lives are valued less, for sure, in our society.
The pandemic has made some of the most vulnerable even more vulnerable. That's the cry from some people with disabilities who work in essential jobs like retail. Since the pandemic, many have been asked to pick up full-time hours, but that is pushing them now to the brink of losing their income assistance. Advocacy groups say it has uncovered inadequacies of the government program.
It does put a fear in you that, oh my God, is that going to happen to us? And are we going to face this problem? And if we do, then how are we going to handle that?
COVID-19 has left many BC restaurants struggling to stay open. For some, it's meant sacrifices. For others, it's meant adapting to a new way of doing things. Still, many are left grappling with one central question: how to keep business afloat long enough to last through the pandemic.
And Dr. Bonnie Henry is reporting 11 more deaths from COVID-19 in BC and 624 new cases in the past 24 hours. More than 400 of those are in the Fraser Health region. 356 people are in the hospital, with 92 in intensive care. BC churches have also been issued tickets now totaling $18,400 for breaking pandemic rules. 3 of them, those places of worship, are in the Fraser Valley, and they were holding gatherings in violation of public health orders.
Earlier this week, we told you about new data showing that some Indigenous people in BC are harder hit when it comes to COVID-19. In BC's Northern Health region, nearly 36% of people with confirmed cases are First Nations, even though the Indigenous people there make up less than 17% of that region's population. That high number means First Nations people have confirmed cases at twice the rate of the rest of the population in BC's north. Tonight, many are asking how and why this stark imbalance is happening. And joining us now to talk about this more is Dr. Shannon McDonald, Chief Medical Officer of the First Nations Health Authority. Dr. McDonald, thanks for doing this. I want to ask you first of all about the imbalance in Northern Health. The numbers are obviously very concerning. Are we able to say why this is happening?
The second wave has hit the north particularly badly, and we've seen those numbers climb significantly. We've just in the last couple of days, we've seen, yesterday was 24 new cases in Northern Health Authority. Communities had done an amazing job in wave one in controlling access to their communities, controlling behavior of individuals in the community, and being very, very cautious. And then we all got kind of used to the whole thing, and we've seen changes in people's behavior, a little more relaxed, more likely to gather in groups when it's really not recommended. And those have triggered some of these community clusters that we've seen. And recognizing that many Indigenous people, the social determinants of health are not the same as some other citizens, overcrowded housing, poverty, other factors in their lives that make it challenging for them to resist transmission when it happens.
Indeed. So I guess to try to get a handle on this, do we have to go back to where we were several months ago, where you could keep cases under control?
Well, I'm not sure we can control it in the same way that we did in wave one. We've definitely seen higher rates of community transmission, not just in the nations, but in the surrounding areas. So when people go into town to do what people need to do in town, get gas, get groceries, whatever, there's also opportunities for the virus to be transmitted. So it becomes much more challenging to manage daily life and stay in a lockdown situation. So, people leave to get medical care, people leave to go to work, and the behavior that we need to really keep in mind on a daily basis about distancing, masking, hand washing, all of those things just become that much more important when it's out in the community like it is right now.
And what about these calls to release specific data about the proximity of COVID cases to Indigenous communities? I mean, would identifying communities or outbreaks or exposures help?
It's really challenging, and that's why the question went to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner. To be honest, I don't receive, with the First Nations Health Authority, I receive First Nations specific cases, but I don't receive the number of cases or the degree of transmission in those proximal communities. So it would require a provincial release of that data. But it is still a matter of individual behavior and individual transmission. So even if you knew that the town down the road, I live on Reserve about 20 minutes north of Victoria, if I went into Victoria and knew that there was COVID in Victoria, would I behave differently? Well, I probably still get groceries, still get gas, still go to appointments that I might have. So it's very challenging to say exactly where the risk is in a community, even though the numbers may be high. What we've been able to do with our partners in the province is develop heat maps that kind of show graphically where large numbers of cases are that can help people make those individual decisions. But the kind of data that was being asked for is much more challenging.
Dr. McDonald, we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Coming up, old stories, new leads. The push to write leading roles for LGBTQ characters in Christmas movies.
The crossing is clear in Revelstoke tonight, 6:43. There's a live look. Snow on the ground there. Rain for us. So how's the weekend looking? And more importantly, what's it looking like for Christmas? Your ho-ho holiday forecast with Johanna is next.
There's nothing like COVID to shag up your plans, Grandmother said as we all washed our hands. I hope there's no visitors planning to come. Go on, Shernan. Who'd be that stunned? Any mummers loaded? No! Hark, what's that noise? All to our chagrin. There's mummers outside, but they're not coming in. They're out in the yard and they'll have to stay there till they fills out this questionnaire. Are you sneezing or coughing or feverish, my son? Stand there till I gets me thermometer gun and stop posting photos. Have ye crowd gone mad? You knows now the optics are bad. A scuff in the kitchen is all very nice, but we're heeding Janice Fitzgerald's advice. They're cancelling gatherings all over town. The government says shut her down. John Hagee has made it abundantly plain, unless it helps finance a Liberal campaign. Your quaint outboard antics are not worth the cost, so mummers, nice mummers, get lost. I don't want to sound like a humorless nag, but you're sloppy and careless and half in the bag. If you're dead set on dancing and singing your tunes, send e-bites and do it on Zoom. You're not social distancing, that's plain to see, and that pillowcase on your head ain't PPE. Now pack up your ugly sticks, cordines, and spoons, 'cause COVID has got Christmas ruined. Yes, pack up your ugly sticks, cordines, and spoons. COVID has got Christmas ruined. Dip it off with me hand sanitizer. Come on, Nan.
Hey there, festive frienderinos. It's Gary here to celebrate one of my favorite holiday traditions, hugs. Let's hug all the things. Christmas tree hug. Yeah. Stocking hug. Oh yeah, I feel the love and the toys. Figgy pudding hug. Wait, what is figgy pudding anyway? Happy holidays from CBC Kids. Surprise upside down camera hug. Yeah.
The Market Report is brought to you by Fortis BC. We've got even bigger rebates.
Rebate.
Whoa! On select high-efficiency equipment for business, but only for a limited time.
And let's bring back our meteorologist, Johanna Wagstaffe. And Johanna, I was trying to remember a day that was as yucky as today. Yeah. And for as long as it went on, right? I usually will see that for an hour or two, or maybe a morning or an afternoon, but it was all day long.
Yeah. I think we should probably do a top 10 gross days roundup before the end of the year. And I think this might just be top of the list. Yeah, it was pretty messy, and that's because we got the warm front brought the rain in nice and early. We've been in that sort of pocket for most of the day, and now we've got the cold front also bringing the winds. It's fast moving though, so very different story by tomorrow morning. Let me show you the big picture. It's actually all laid out for us across the Pacific tonight. Have to get through another couple of hours. Winds still coming in from the southeast for YVR. We'll see them shift around to the northwest any moment now as that front crosses eastward. Saturday morning is out there for you in the Pacific. That's a dry start to the day, but then you can see just a little farther west, Saturday afternoon, we'll move in with more rain. Still under the wind warnings. I imagine Environment Canada will drop them in the next few hours once that front passes eastward. This system brought gusts close to 100 kilometers per hour for the west coast and even the southern Gulf Islands, seeing gusts over 70 earlier this evening. Part of the reason why a lot of ferry sailings were canceled. Taking you through the overnight, and again, see how quickly that front tracks eastward. It's a dry early start to your Saturday. If you're up and at 'em sort of before mid-morning, you've got just a cloudy start to your Saturday, but by sort of 11 a.m. noonish, we'll see those showers fill in. Some heavier downpours for the island. In fact, Tofino could end up with over 150 millimeters by the time we hit the end of the weekend. We've got a break on Sunday though. That's our glimmer of hope. Get through a soggy Saturday. There's our break day. Get through a soggy Monday, and then rewarded by not just one afternoon, but a few days in a row. Now, I couldn't leave for my holidays without giving you, drum roll, the official coast to coast, because we can't see our friends and family, winter snow forecast for December 25th. And yes, I'm sorry to say, the chances here in Vancouver are slim to none. Maybe a few flakes. That's the best I could do.
Is that Superman on our coast? What is that?
Oh, that's a snowboarder. That's my clip art snowboarder.
I thought it was his cape. Okay. Wow, we're going to have to freeze frame this and take a real good look at that. Well done. Thanks, Johanna.
Thank you. Thank you. Worked on that all day.
Well worth it. So we'll look forward to that this weekend. Well, this year's onslaught of holiday films includes something new, an unprecedented wave of movies centered around LGBTQ relationships.
While it's a welcome change, some critics say Hollywood still has a long way to go when it comes to telling stories about queers. Eli Glasner has more.
Look, Daddy, teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
For many, December means a certain kind of cinematic comfort food. But there's been a group left out of those traditional tales of cheer.
As you realize your sexuality growing up, and you kind of think, oh, you know, am I bisexual? Am I gay? Am I a lesbian? I don't see myself represented. It kind of just makes you feel sad.
But in 2020, there's a whole sleigh full of queer content. From Happiest Season...
What are you doing in the closet?
...to Dashing in December...
Oh, hey,
I'll use the one down the hall.
...and I Hate New Year's.
Feels good, doesn't it? Being in love.
This director says while there's plenty of gay and lesbian movies, most are rather serious.
They're coming out stories, they're unrequited love, and some people still experience that. But I think what was also missing was sort of this classic, tropey, fabulous, happy love story.
Do you think Last year, the Hallmark Channel buckled under pressure and removed a TV commercial featuring a same-sex wedding.
Why don't we celebrate Christmas with our kids?
Now they're making their own gay holiday film.
Because it's been proven time and time again that it is actually a really good business model to be diverse and inclusive, they're realizing that the real risk is leaving communities out.
Hi! I hope this isn't too over the top.
And so after years of playing minor gay characters, Toronto's Ben Lewis is co-starring with his real-life husband in the Christmas setup. A big deal for Ben, and even the guy giving him his pre-production COVID test.
He was very emotional, just sort of like, as he's like swabbing our noses, telling us, you know, how much the representation means to him, how it's something he never thought he would see.
While Lewis is thrilled to be playing a character with enough screen time to merit the classic on-screen kiss, he says more needs to be done to include trans and people of color so everyone gets their mistletoe moment. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
Okay.
Will it fit? No, it fits.
Garrett Willington stocks the shelves with boxes of tank kits at his Model Land hobby store. He says the old pastime has been enjoying lots of new interest this year as parents look to keep their kids busy doing something that doesn't involve a screen.
Probably the big thing it teaches you is patience and planning ahead and how to read instructions. Because, of course, if you don't read the instructions, it's just a big disaster.
He says demand for military models surged along with COVID cases and lockdowns earlier this year, and it's not stopped.
Well, the struggle for us relative to COVID has been keeping our shelves full because there's been, if it's not a supplier problem where they can't produce enough things, it's a shipping problem where things are sitting at ports because customs can't look at what's coming in.
As well as honing motor skills and problem solving, model making is also a history lesson, bringing the warplanes, tanks and boats to life with paint and glue, creating replicas like this Lancaster bomber. Model makers say it's a hobby that can also bring families together.
You know, that's how so many of us got started out back in the day, was doing this with our dads or our moms or uncles or whomever it is. And you start building these models together, and it becomes kind of a really fun, intimate family project that you can do. And you finish it, you have a great sense of accomplishment at the end of it all, and that's, I think, is really fantastic to have that.
Hobby stores like Model Land say it's been their busiest Christmas in a long time. Dan McGarvey, CBC News, Calgary.
Well, you just got to be careful.
The sidewalk is a bit slippery outside his Haysboro home, but that's not stopping 88-year-old Mike James from setting out for his daily walk.
8 kilometers being 5 miles, I usually try to put in at least another 5 in the afternoon.
A commitment he made in 2003 after being rushed into surgery for a serious heart condition.
I decided that I was going to make damn sure it didn't build up anymore.
Mike has been walking roughly 20 kilometers every day ever since. The only time it was difficult to get outside was when his wife of 66 years died from COVID-19 in May.
Just couldn't stop crying. I still walked, but I didn't cry as much out on my walk as I did when I was in the house.
103,593 kilometers in 17 years, a number to be proud of, but it's the surroundings that mean the most to him.
I don't just love it, I treasure it.
James donates 10 cents per mile to charity each year, about $6,000 so far. Terry Trembath, CBC News, Calgary.
Each year at the CBC, we host our annual open house and food bank day to raise money for those in need.
We knew we had to do things differently this year, but that didn't stop our amazing viewers and listeners from giving back big time.
You have now raised, get this, nearly $2.6 million. Let's have a look back at that big day.
Well, good Friday morning. I'm Stephen Quinn, and welcome to the 34th annual CBC Food Bank Day special. We are all about supporting the food banks right across BC on the program today. In fact,
well, obviously, our house is closed, so we moved open house to your house.
Well, you guys are technically in my house, so welcome.
Thank you all for joining us.
Nice to meet you guys.
It's so good to see so many familiar faces.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to
It was
ride in
surprisingly personal. You know, everyone was in their little Zoom boxes, but it really felt more intimate than I was expecting.
Why near the water, why does it always get more windy there?
Excellent question.
I also love your CBC Christmas ornaments.
I love them too.
I'm using a recipe that I found online. Don't tell my mom. She'll get angry.
You can see I'm wearing antlers. I just wanted to brighten things up.
And we've got kind of a no food rule in here, so this is like totally breaking rules.
Congratulations, you won our prize pack.
Oh my goodness.
That's why this virtual open house is so nice to get to see some of our listeners and hear from some of them.
Even though I won't be wearing antlers anytime soon, we definitely enjoy having fun at work.
We are taking your calls on this special 3-hour edition of BC Today. And this just in, we have broken the $1 million mark. Thank you so much to all of you for your incredible generosity.
The nice things about this year is how people have come together, and obviously today is an example of that.
Food banks are busy in normal years, but you layer a pandemic on top of it, and the growth is massive.
I'm stunned by the generosity of people.
I think more of us are in tune with the fact of just how lucky we are to have what we have, and it makes it just that much easier to reach out and share a little bit with others.
Amazing day for sure, and it is called Open House Food Bank Day, so next year we certainly hope we'll be able to have you back in our house.
Yeah,
Johanna,
oh,
sorry to
yes?
interrupt. What are you wearing?
Well, this is my ugly sweater. I don't know if you can see. I'm like a full-on elf right now.
Wow.
Yeah, I just thought I would get into the holiday spirit. It's my last day for a little while, and I mean, happy holidays to everyone. It's a nice note to end on, the generosity of our viewers and listeners. So, yeah, Merry Christmas from me.
Absolutely. Johanna's getting the party started early. Love it.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Jo. And you could always watch our newscasts online at cbc.ca/BC.
Dan's here at 11 right after the National. Have a great weekend.
Good night.
Happy holidays.